Today's topic, because of me, they have a firewall now. Welcome to another episode of TABLEscraps, in which we present a topic related to tabletop gaming and then have a brief conversation about it with the live audience. Let's not waste any more time listening to this weird intro music. Let's get right into today's discussion. Hey there, and welcome back to another episode in our experimental, month-long daily web series, TABLEscraps, in which we present a topic about the tabletop board gaming industry and discuss it with the live streaming chat window people that are joining us for this episode. Let's jump right into today's episode with a question that comes from viewer Christian Geigner, who asks about Board Game Geek. How big is the economic damage caused by surfing Board Game Geek compared to other websites at work? Well, this is a tricky question for me. I'm going to need to rely on the studio audience here for this one a bit, because I have personally been fortunate enough to have not been in a situation where my employer has ever blocked access to Board Game Geek. I guess I'm part of the problem causing the economic damage at my workplace, and that's fair. But I wanted to crack this question up a little bit more, open this up just a wee bit more to not just necessarily be Board Game Geek, but what about Kickstarter and just board game social media in general? You know, how much of our time is spent being preoccupied by this content when we could be doing other more productive things? I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about my other friends that I know that are heavily into board game content online. And I was thinking of a friend of mine who has at work 2 monitors set up. He has his normal monitor, and then he has a second monitor that is dedicated to running Hootsuite, which is a website that lets you track in real time all your Twitter channels, your Twitter feeds you follow, Facebook, and everything else. All your social media are in all of these columns on this monitor. And I was about to make fun of him for having this whole monitor set up and dedicated just to social media while he's at work, until I realized that I also have a second monitor on my computer, which is set up and completely dedicated to following social media at work. So instead, I will bury my pride and I will turn it over to the YouTube chat, and we'll take a few comments, questions, and whatnot here, and we'll see what happens. Our first comment of the episode comes from Gazentia Fox, who says, "As I recall, companies with more relaxed attitudes to social media, etc., that is, companies that trust their employees, actually get better productivity than those that are stricter." I have heard that as well, and I'm hoping that's true. I think that as an employer and an employee, the respect goes both ways. If the employer respects the employee is going to appreciate that and return that respect around to the employer. Of course, it's different on a case-by-case basis, but I have experienced cases where, you know, being able to work remotely, telecommute or something, that level of trust actually can increase productivity because you're able to have that much more control over your work day and that level of trust, and it pays off. Let's continue on to Halfhand83, who says, "We have web filters in place, but my profile is allowed to access anything since I'm an admin. And it still shows on the logs, but as long as I don't spend too much time browsing, then it isn't a problem. Also, I'm watching this on my cell phone, which is connected to our guest Wi-Fi to avoid getting in trouble for streaming media." Hopefully, no one's in earshot, and saying that out loud won't get you in trouble, so I'll just whisper it. Halfhand 83 is doing market research right now, so that's good. Gazentia actually asks a pertinent question to me. Isn't your job in part social media management, Chaz? At least one of them? Yeah, actually, I am who am I? I am the social media content manager for Passport Game Studios, which, involves me having YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all of that stuff, basically up all day, you know, scanning for stories and posting things and interacting with people. Anyway, let's continue on with Stefan, who says, With the mobile phones, is it much use blocking it on computers anymore? You know, it'll just make people use their smartphones instead anyway, right? That's a good question. Well, it depends, I guess, on the type of firewall, because if you have like a hardware firewall with its own, config, you can block incoming and outgoing traffic to websites at the firewall level as well, instead of on the client by client basis. So technically speaking, if someone didn't want to use like their LTE and they wanted to connect their phone to the Wi-Fi, they could still, use it that way. But I guess if they want to use their streaming data through their cell service, they could totally just circumvent that, and it would make the whole firewall thing pointless. It's amazing how technology is evolving to the point where every time that you try and lock down one thing, 3 more loopholes or ways to do this, spring up. It's fascinating and amazing, and one of the fantastic powers of the internet. Kabuki Kid says, probably the same idea that employers with regular breaks and a decent length lunch are more productive than those who get bare minimum time away from solidly working. That's true, and I gotta be honest. Working from home, which I am fortunate enough to be able to do, I find myself setting a slightly different schedule than I would when I would go into a physical workplace. I find myself able to get in the zone and a lot more productive, as long as no birds or dogs land on me and distract me while I'm working. Fortunately, we didn't get Half Hand in trouble because he mentions that Bluetooth earbuds are wonderful things. So that's, whew, glad I didn't spoil that for you there, Half Hand. Good to know. Gazensha also mentions, also, most humans are better at chunking focus into 20-minute segments, rapidly switching between tasks, rather than multitasking or plowing on with one big task. A change is as good as a rest, has some truth to it. That is a good point there. I know that when I buckle down and work on stuff, many times I'll plug in my headphones. I have got to find a way to corral this conversation back to board games, though. Kabuki offers, it is almost analogous. It's really similar to how it was a big no-no to bring a camera to a music concert. And then smartphones came along and it became impossible then to police it. Now nobody cares. I did once work at a job that blocked Board Game Geek. Board Game Geek was apparently listed under the category of gaming, which was really meant to halt access to gambling websites. That's really interesting. If you want to block a gambling website related to the board game industry, I would think instead you would want to block Kickstarter. Because that's kind of a gamble when you back a game on Kickstarter. Hey, can I get a rim shot? I can see Board Game Geek falling into the gaming category, even though it doesn't quite fit that model. That actually might be why Board Game Geek is blocked more often, because of that gaming category. David mentions, it may not be social media related, but podcasts and such can be synced locally to a mobile device, making a firewall against it moot. Oh, that is interesting. I was not aware of that. I know that I download a lot of the podcasts I listen to, and so even if I don't have a Wi-Fi connection at all, I can still listen to them. But it's nice to know, David, that there is still a way when it comes to podcasts to stick it to the man and listen anyway. Stefan mentions, music for mental work can be really great. I used to do that when working at a desk. It's just a good way to get energy. I agree. It's amazing. It surprises me how you can plug in some music and it can revitalize you. What's interesting too is there are sometimes when the game group comes over and we're playing a game, we'll turn on some kind of soft music in the background, something just innocuous that doesn't require your attention, not driving music, just kind of background music. And that can fill in some of the quiet gaps sometimes. It can seem to help the flow of the game. I don't know if it actually does, but it really does seem to enhance the gameplay experience sometimes. So if anyone has not blocked the radio in their house, trying to tie this into the firewall and doing a really poor job of it. If anyone else does that, let me know, because I'm curious to know if that, like what we're talking about with music, if that kind of fills in those gaps and helps energize the gameplay. Stefan contradicts us, though, by saying that he disagrees with nobody caring about the smartphones as cameras. It annoys the heck out of me. Well, does it annoy you at a concert or just walking around in daily life? If someone has their smartphone sitting on a desk and you just walk by and it's just sitting there by itself, not being touched, does it still bug you? Do you get like hives and a cold sweat when you see cell phones? Do certain carriers, give you a rash? Like, Verizon, will you actually get visible like bumps on your skin versus like Sprint? I want to know, because why bother trying to salvage this episode at this point? It's totally off the rails. I'm just, whatever. We'll go in that direction. JD mentions that when I was in Cubeland, I used to wear headphones, but then my boss came by and noticed that it wasn't plugged into anything at all. Oh, are you kidding me? I do that all the time. Yes, I have plugged my I have put on my headphones without them even being plugged into anything at all, just to give people the signal that I'm trying to concentrate on stuff. And what's really, really interesting about that is how often it doesn't work. Axhindrol mentions, I use instrumental video game music as background music when playing board games. Oh, I will have to track down some of that and try it, because I know video game music is specifically designed to not take your entire focus, to help you retain your focus in a way, to not get in your way, like words coming out of your mouth. If you have any specific video game soundtracks that you recommend, let me know in the comments below. I think I've heard that the that the Final Fantasy soundtrack is really good for that. But if there's others, let me know. And Christian's gonna finish us off here by saying that some songs invoke feelings of some games. And oh, that's the amazing thing about music. This could be a whole little big episode on its own. I have that same thing happen to me. I will have certain songs that I hear when certain events are happening, certain games being played or certain things, and that song will instantly become tied to that event or that game. And when I hear it, anytime I hear that song from then on, it takes me right back to that same place. But for the time being, we'll have to keep that thought in mind because we are out of time for this episode. So if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions on today's topic, which I'm not even sure at this point what today's topic actually was. We kind of went all over the place. But you are welcome to post them in the YouTube comments below or over on our Facebook and Twitter pages where we can continue the conversation there as well. Before we go, this episode has been made possible by the financial contributions of our Pair of Dice Paradise fundraiser over on Podpledge. So thank you everyone who's been supporting that. And until the next time, I've been Chaz Marler, who along with the YouTube chat has been, maybe this episode more than any other, serving up some table scraps. Talk to you again soon. David is helping out by spelling out oh my gosh, I cannot believe I cannot pronounce this word. Analogous. That still doesn't sound right. Analogous. You know what? Similar to. Let's just go with that.